face like I usually do, and it's kind of blurred. But the Hero with 1,000 Faces by Joe Campbell. That's the book for this week. Cindy's already read it, and just wanted to do a brief overview of it real quick. It was a very dense book, a lot of big words. I spent a lot of time like trying to look up words because, wow, he's got a really pedagogical, is that a word? Pedagogical writing style.
Mm-hmm.
It's very professorial, I guess. And I guess he was a college professor. And so it was kind of hard to understand, but thankfully he's got cliff notes on Amazon. You can find an interview with a series actually of him talking with Bill Moyer, talking about myth and the hero's journey and his life's ambition, which was to learn more about myths and their meaning throughout humanity's history and kind of what they are trying to impart to humanity. And this book made me think a lot. I had crazy thoughts here, and it really turns a lot of paradigms on its head that, from a spiritual perspective, things that I grew up knowing, maybe aren't actually knowable or in the way that I thought they were. Does that make any sense? So what is myth?
What do you mean by that?
So I had to think, what is myth? And he put it really great in this interview with Bill Moyer, Campbell did, where he said, how do I turn this thing off?
How do you turn what off?
The sweeper. It's so noisy. It's running around. I can't even hear myself.
Button on the top.
I got it. I turned it off. Okay, so what is myth? And the way Campbell put it was, myths are the interface, our interface to knowing the unknowable, which that's a really profound statement. You can't know the unknowable, so the interface is something simple, some simple stories that help us describe and explain the unknowable.
Yeah.
How's it going, Dale? First of all, where are you, Cindy?
So I am in Virginia Blacksmithing Institute in Waynesboro, Virginia, with my mentor as my hero's journey. This is Dale Morse, and he is master blacksmith and super awesome. And he's in a year-long program to become like a certified artistic blacksmith. And so that was my call to passion.
Okay, let's talk about that. But before we do that, just high level, myths are interfaces to our knowing the unknowable. Can you move over a little bit? Because my box is in front of your face. There you go. And can you sit up a little bit? Because I think if it's recording it like this, we can't see your, there you go.
Okay.
All right.
He's very short.
Let's look at the floor.
In knowing the unknowable, these simple stories have been passed down through humanity's history. And they seem to be simple stories that are just folklore, but Campbell points out that they're really complex. And one of the powers of myth is the duality of meaning. So you can have the simple story that just seems like, people running through the forest and running into this hag sitting by a well or whatever. And it just seems like this fun story, but there's actually another meaning behind it. And that's really what the power of myth is. And another thing that was interesting is how a lot of these myths have evolved into more contemporary religions. And so that was a big mental shift for me, like Buddhism. So he says Buddha and Christ are almost, you could almost do a parallel path for those two stories, but Buddha was 500 years before Christ. And so that's interesting. Like, why are there so many similar stories? And you could, look at the story of Noah and the flood. I mean, that was it Gilgamesh, or there was some other story that was before that from I think it was Samaria or Assyria or whatever. I think it was Gilgamesh. So again, similar stories that predate stories in the Bible. So another thing I was thinking about when I was reading this was that I tried to read the Bible again. I read through the Bible a couple times in college. And so as an older adult, I tried to get through it again, starting with Genesis. And I got really frustrated because my perspective was, if this doesn't point to real events in history, if I can't correlate that in my mind, if it didn't really exist, if it didn't really happen, then I have no need for it, right? Like, what do I believe in if it didn't actually happen? And so I gave up. I'm like, I can't get through this. But in the context of myth, maybe it makes a little bit more sense. Maybe you're not supposed. Maybe you can't know it. Maybe you can't know the real truths behind it unless you put it in the proper context of myth and the larger context of what might be, what humanity might be trying to pass forward to future generations. And so I'm still, I think the thing you have to do in respect to myths and these stories and what it means to you spiritually or religiously or whatever is you got to work. You got to think about it. You got to read. You got to, increase the breadth of your knowledge as well as the depth of your knowledge and what this might actually mean. And one of the things that popped in my mind this morning, actually, while I was thinking about this, was maybe one of the big points of all of these myths, including Christianity and Buddhism and all this, is to try to get humanity to think have a less egocentric view of the world and more of a humanistic view of the world. What does my life have to do with the rest of humanity? How does my life improve the rest of humanity? How does my hero's journey help add value to the world? So that's kind of what I've been thinking about with this book. So this hero's journey, according to Campbell, is a pattern that an archetype or a pattern that we see throughout all these stories throughout history. And basically it's, someone gets either compelled to go out into the world in some way or told to go out into the world in some way. And they undergo some adventure, trials and tribulations, they win, and then they come back home with some new thing, some boon is how he puts it, some new power that this person has gained through these trials and tribulations, and they bring it back.
What's cool about it is it's very much focused on the way that you can turn it around is how do we do it in our everyday lives.
Right.
So it's not just this big epic, Star Wars looking thing where you have to be Luke Skywalker and save the universe. It's how do you bring it back in your everyday lives with the people around you and go out and change the world and make it better, or change just a dynamic between somebody else and yourself, or make an organization better or something, or learn.
Right.
It's more about like what you can tangibly incorporate it and how do you change yourself and continue that growth and improvement.
Yeah. And that was the other thing. That's what made me think more that all of these myths are more about how can we as individuals help improve the world.
Yeah.
And it's not just about these heroes of old who did these great things. It's about, we're all supposed to emulate that. Our life is a journey and we are the hero of our own journey. And as we
you're the hero of my journey, James.
Gotta go kill that forge. It's a lot of background noise.
All right.
Can you move over a little bit? My box is still in your face.
Yeah,
I can't see your face.
I'm on my knees, and so it's like they're falling asleep. Hang on, let me get a stool. I brought us a chair.
Oh, nice.
That's better. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, I don't have a focal distance for that.
So the hero's journey applies to all of us, I think. And one of the great things I took away from the interview with him with Bill Moyer was that his students were asking him, "Hey, how do we find our purpose in life?" And he simply said, follow your bliss. What is it that gives you passion? What is your interest? And go for it. Like, go out there and do it. And in doing so, you'll make the world a better place. You'll change the world invariably, because you're stoking your creative passions, and your creative passions. Creativity exists outside of the normal human systems that we're involved in, work and all that stuff. Creativity lives outside the boundary of that. And so by stoking your creative powers, you help change the world in chasing that. So how are you stoking your creative powers right now?
By being here. Well, I'm curious, Dale, what's your perspective on this book?
Well, like I say, it's been 30 some years since I had any, firsthand contact with it.
Yeah.
So you brought out the other day. It's like, yeah, I remember that. College. Man, it was a fairly new thing back then. Of course, I saw Star Wars in the theater. I'm that old.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Listen to some of what you've been saying this morning is like, there are truths and allegories, allegorical truth, if you will. It's not a historical truth as such. Whatever event in history that was the flood, Noah's flood, is, we don't know. We don't have, there are no pictures of that event. But it's come down through many generations, as an oral tradition. There is truth there. The bones of it are still there, even if we don't have a specific event or a news feed or a blog to point to that tells us the exact of that. So I think there's plenty of truth to be found in myth and allegory. There was another thought I had, which now has escaped me because I got down that rabbit trail, diverted my thinking. Daily, creativity line outside of, I have had my experience in terms of creativity in everyday life. Of course, I've pursued a creative career, so it hasn't very much been directly part of my work, but a part of my work, not all of my work, because there's plenty of things that, responsibilities for an entrepreneur that are not my happy place. Being an artistic blacksmith isn't just pounding steel factors. Quite a lot of time in front of a computer, dealing with plans and contractors and clients, et cetera, and so forth. There's some nuts and bolts, but you can bring creativity into most facets. One of my other passions is cooking. I hardly have any time for it, but I'm the cook at home, and I've become fairly adept at the 30-minute meal,
Instapots.
Spots are great. Yeah. But there are ways I think you can bring creativity into your everyday existence, which can enhance, like blacksmithing beautifies things and create, fulfills function. Can be security, it can be stability, and as well as aesthetic value. So it's an interesting field to be in. And whereas like cooking and music stuff, it's interpretive performance. It's like, you make a meal and then you consume it. Boy, that was great. Try to do that again tomorrow. Or you play a piece of music, each time you play it, it's going to be slightly different. It's interpretive. And the person playing the music may not have even written the music. So they're interpreting someone else's creativity and imposing some of their own.
Yeah, back to Dewey. I tortured him with Dewey all last year.
Anyway, there's plenty of opportunities for creativity. Over the years, this philosophy Herman Hesse and some other things that have influenced me, I've kind of come to a place where I believe we're made of the stuff of the universe, right? Anything that's not hydrogen, helium, and who knows, comes from being cooked in stars, fusion reactors, and all the carbon and all the shit that we're made of, the iron, steel, all this stuff. It was at some point floating around in the universe and was a star, and it's billions of years. The time frame of the universe is well past anything that we can even comprehend,
Mhm.
the space, distance, stuff like that. But we are still from that matter, and we've become aware. We have a consciousness. We are the universe becoming aware, slowly becoming aware of itself, describing itself, finding out what it can do. We're like the infancy of matter, become aware. So it's, I think, our purpose, if such, is that.
Mhm.
And though we all have these different avenues in our lives and things and whatnot, it takes all of us to move forward into that progress forward in that purpose.
So by our individual journeys of finding our own purpose, we're thereby creating the whole universe as a collective purpose.
But yeah,
Okay.
that's not a bad way to put it.
Okay. Like collective
So,
conscious kind of.
that's where I'm at right now. Who knows?
Oh.
I'll be somewhere else tomorrow.
So, Cindy, tell me a little bit about your hero's journey.
So my hero's journey. So this is kind of cool. So Dale went through his hero's journey and became, did all the blacksmithing thing and learned and became a better person, then became the mentor. And part of that's what I love about it is you go through your own path and then you can help and impart knowledge on somebody else. So my hero's journey and my call to action, I've always loved blacksmithing, but I'm in my generation, that wasn't a thing that women did and didn't even cross my mind. And then suddenly, and I don't know what the trigger was, but I realized that maybe it's something I could do. Oh, it's because you were talking about doing a class. And I'm like, I would love to do that. I think I would love to try that. I don't know if I can. And then I saw Ellen's work. I'm like, I can do this.
That's right.
And it was back and forth a lot because it's inexpensive to get started and whatever. And then you actually were my push. So it was like that fluctuation, that phase of the journey. And then you were my push because you bought me the anvil and hammer for my birthday. I'm like, all right, now I'm all in. And so a few months later, I took Ellen's class and that just changed. That changed. So that was the trigger point to the one challenge to change my path. And so from there, I've been mucking around on my own, coming to classes, and now I finally buckled down and I'm in that moment of truth where changing who I am as a person. And so each class I come to is my mini hero's journey. Cause holy shit, that first time with the hooks, I had a meltdown and I usually don't have big meltdowns.
It's hard.
It's hard.
It's hard.
And
I'm glad you had Ellen as your original mentor.
Yeah.
She is so patient and so good at bringing students through on their concepts and their ideas.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And seeing
Ellen Durkin. Are we talking about Ellen Durkin?
What's that?
Are we talking about Ellen Durkin?
Yes. So you can point back to her podcast.
Yes.
We're all connected.
Cool.
Yeah. Whoever watches this, if you are interested in blacksmithing and you want a place to start, where Ellen Durkin is teaching,
And
That's
she's
a good
teaching
place.
here in May, I think, of this year. April. Yeah.
she teaches a lot of places, but if you have an opportunity to work with Ellen, I'd highly recommend it.
Yeah. And if you're in Virginia, come to Waynesboro because it's awesome.
Yeah. So you guys, Dale, give a pitch for your shop there and your company.
You have a pitch? Oh,
Yeah.
come take blacksmithing classes.
Where do we go?
So we have more than just the year-long program that this one's in. We have lots of beginning weekend classes just for folks to give it a try, because that's really where you should start. As if you had, if you were inspired by a TV show or by something you saw at a historic park or whatnot, it is a difficult discipline. It's multidisciplinary, and I don't think that you have to be a super powerhouse to do this, but strength doesn't hurt. But almost no one, just a very few people, walk in the door with a mechanical aptitude where they just know how to swing a hammer properly. It's just that it's a very rare talent. So the vast majority of us have to get there the hard way, which is beating our joints to pieces until we finally figure out to fucking relax and let the tool do the work, and have more than one speed. Looking at you.
Stop, go.
Yep.
Out or
In
no.
all things.
Oh shit.
So anyway, lots of people come in wanting to make knives because that's very sexy. And then, you know, truthfully, knife making is kind of boring. Ornamental work is, if you're drawn to blacksmithing and knife making because of the fiery bits and then pounding on steel bits, chances are you're a blacksmith, not a knife maker, because most of knife making is on belt sanders over here and in an oven where you're just watching paint dry. So the most creative part of a knife is the handle. Frankly, that's where you can get really creative with a blade. And then, you know, there's welding, which is also great for, you know, sculptors, and it's a creative way of putting metal pieces together that's not too technically challenging. So we offer some of that. And then for those people who are serious about it, we have longer term knife making stuff. We have longer term blacksmithing stuff. I don't bother with teaching welding on a professional level because there's a lot of technical colleges around here that do that. I don't see a need to add to that market. But yeah, if you want to, you know, ferrous metals mostly, if you want to come beat on steel and iron, this is the place to do it.
Very good. Well, thank you all so much. I got to get to work. But Dale, thank you so much for popping in and providing your insight.
For what it's worth.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
For what it's worth. All right, you guys go have fun hammering metal.
All right, Olivia, I'll see you tonight. Bye.
All right. Bye.